Hello and welcome to Star Citizen Sunday. This is a weekly show which covers all the news from Star Citizen from the week just past. I am your host Mac, so let's get on with it. This week 3.5 draws ever closer, and Chris Roberts answers a ton of our questions, including more on the backend tech like server meshing and server object container streaming. So as usual, a quick 3.5 update. We are still in Wave 1 on the PTU as of this very moment, but I would expect 3.5 to go live sometime tonight. They are working around the clock to get this update out, and so we could either see an open PTU or just going straight to live. Once you do get in, be sure to let me know what your thoughts are on the new release, and I do hope you enjoy it. I will obviously continue to bring some more 3.5 videos over the next few months, checking out the new content and gameplay. So in Around the Verse this week, they started talking about Star Marine. Now there's lots of Arena Commander and Star Marine fixes. These fixes also aid in the persistent universe and Squadron 42, with it all being connected anyway, using the same systems. They've improved the elimination game mode, improving the spawning logic, which now checks for player proximity so you don't spawn right next to someone. They've also added Damian Comms, which is a reduced map of the station Damian without breakable glass. This is just to encourage more encounters and force players into a smaller area. For Last Stand, the improvements are refining the capture point mechanic. It's now more visible, whether it's being captured, capturing or neutral. You can defend as well after you've started the capturing. You're not locked into the actual laptop. They want to make kills more rewarding and give better feedback. So kill notifications, the scoring, the animations. It's so much clearer now as to what's happening. And I actually had a good go with it yesterday during our org meet, and it is a lot better, less buggy, and feels a lot more responsive, but there are still a lot of silly little bugs which would make it even better if they were fixed. Things like weapons not reloading or being properly loaded when you spawn in. These are just little quality of life issues, and I'm sure they will address them thanks to our feedback. But as always, put these up on the issue council, let them see them, and if they are going through Star Marine and AC, they will get fixed, and it should become a more relevant game mode, as what Chris says in Reverse the Verse later on. Now, they spoke about some gameplay features. This is interesting. They want to expand the lore system so that the lore chased you everywhere. The wanted levels are being moved up, so if you're level 1, you'll begin getting attacked by security forces interdicting you. From there, it'll go to the advocacy showing up in tougher ships, and then finally, the UEE military will arrive in their hammerheads. The AI bounty hunters will also start appearing at certain levels as well. But the bounty missions will have different levels of difficulty. You'll have your intro missions, then there'll be easy, medium and hard missions. Hard will generally require teaming up with friends to take the bounty down. That sounds really good, and I'm glad they're fine-tuning these missions as well. With the Tisha mission giver, they want to focus on making missions which bring players together. Not always, but giving the option to if you want to. Now, it sounds like if you're, say, for example, you're getting the drugs for Twitch, other players can accept a mission from Blackjack Security to intercept you, and then you'll end up with dogfighting or ground fighting, depending on where you go, which is actually really, really exciting. And it's for those who want to partake in it. Obviously, if you are taking that mission on, expect there to be PvP. Not all the time. It depends on if people do accept the mission, but that's your choice. They're also expanding the content to apply to Hurston and ArcCorp, and it's moons like the bunker missions, the derelict ships with missing persons and so forth. They're spreading them out evenly. It's not just going to be in Crusader anymore, which again is good news. Now, the final piece of ATV, they spoke about the character customizer. The facial customization system will also be used by CIG for populating the universe. We got to see how the devs use it, similar to how we do, but with a lesser user-friendly UI. The list of heads that we saw in the file here is cheaper in terms of performance than any single head or face that was before. Again, they're always improving the visuals of things, but also somehow making them more performance friendly at the same time. This is using the GPU skinning. I will show you the way the devs create the face, I'll just speed it up in the background. But something to note is they don't allow faces to go outside the range of what a human looks like. They want to keep it as realistic as possible, which is unlike most other MMOs. And also, we will be able to have asymmetrical heads, which again is not something you see in a lot of other games. I have done a character customization video myself, which I'll link below. It has changed somewhat since I did it. Not a great deal, just more user-friendly and less buggy. But as they add more heads, we'll get access to them, as well as things like beards and earrings and so forth. So there'll likely be a lot more coming with each patch from now on. Now to finish off with on ATV, Jared gave us a little update in regards to the content and what's happening after 3.5. He explained that after 3.5 is released, the content will take a 3-week hiatus. So that means no more RTV, no more ATV after 3.5 drops for about 3 weeks. He says due to the quarterly release schedule, the developers work extremely hard towards the patches release and thereafter. This hiatus will give them a bit of time off from the cameras, not because they don't want to be on the camera, but just because they've got so much to do. This also affects the amount of content in shows like ATV, meaning that we get a lesser amount of content, which we have been seeing because they're focused on other areas. They're hoping that this 3-week break will make things more efficient for the devs and create better content for us. They're not going to return to the 45-minute ATVs, but delivering around the verses that are more informative and educational is what they want, so we will see. Now this obviously may mean that there might not be enough content each week for my Star Citizen Sunday, only for 3 weeks' time, but if there's something I can bring out or there's some information that we have got, it might mean that it's only going to be 5 to 6 minutes long. Either way, I will continue to cover any news that we do get each week, plus keep getting all this 3.5 videos out that I'm doing so far. Personally, I'm all for the devs getting a break and CIG reassessing the weekly shows. Subs obviously have less value now, so if you don't want to sub, I don't blame you. I will continue mine and just sort of see what happens with the next 3-week break. In January, they did post on the Spectrum, they wanted our opinion on what the sub content is like. We have given that opinion, so hopefully they'll take all that. In the next 3 weeks, they'll have a break and reassess it all, and then come back with a much better series of videos. Now, I'm happy that Jared has addressed this rather than just the Spectrum post, but do let me know what you think anyway, guys. With that said, let's move on to Reverse the Verse. So this week's Reverse the Verse was with Chris Roberts answering questions not just about 3.5, but about the future and a lot about the core tech as well, which was really, really good. We got some great information, and he didn't hold back on anything, which was good. So the first question was to do with the flight model and what's his opinion. He says it's definitely a step in the right direction. Coming this next quarter, they are working on the VTOL. This will make low-speed hovering feel much better and give more control. The Starfarer, for example, should be able to slowly push its way out of atmosphere, feeling realistic. Other big ships will likely need to engage their main engines to go forward and use momentum to take them up. If you have rotational engines or VTOLs, then this will allow you to go straight up easier. They want to bring the ability to get the gunship style gameplay as well, so allowing you to hover and use your gunship and it feel realistic like we see in the movies and so forth. Balancing will be an ongoing thing over a few patches as they try to get the systems working for over 80 ships that are now flyable. Later, they will be bringing in other aspects like wear and tear and misfires, but they do also want to address areas like EVA, the missile guidance system, among other things. It will obviously require learning again to get to grips with all the flight and the combat and so forth, but it does bring more variety for players. And also, it's not just about combat. The flight affects many other areas, and Chris Roberts is happy with the direction it's going, and I have to agree. I'm liking what we see so far. Anyway, the next question is to do with the heat system and quantum travel and what's going on with it. Now, the heat system still needs to be dialed in, so do bear that in mind. Smaller ships like the Aurora are not built to travel across the system in one go, giving a reason to use a bigger ship. The idea is bigger ships are better for extended travel, and if you have an Idris and a Gladius, then load your Gladius into the Idris and take that on the longer journey. Personally, I think it makes more sense that we can have our ships transported for us while we take a commercial travel instead of spending the whole journey alone in your cockpit. That is what this commercial travel is for. But again, it's an ongoing process to balance it right. But the current thinking is that the freelancers and the constellations should be able to jump from one planet to the other. The Idris should be able to travel across the whole system, but obviously smaller ships will need to refuel along the way, or at least cool off. The quantum drive uses power and generates heat. The bigger ships have bigger components. This is why they can go greater distances. And I think Chris Roberts has actually put a real extensive post on the Spectrum in regards to quantum travel. I will link it below, but I'm not going to go through it myself because it's big. Anyway, next question is to do with the DNA face tech. Could we get a numerical ID for faces so we could have two characters looking the same for twins, for example? And like I was always saying, with my head being scanned, it would be great if we could have, for the alpha, everyone using the same head as me. I think that would be quite funny. Anyway, he has spoken about and considered exposing the DNA numbers so people can share faces. In 3.6, there should be a lot more coming, more variety, more options. Also overhauling the user experience to allow us to sculpt and mold our head in a 3D manner. It's not staying like it is now, and it's going to be much easier to make the character that you want. They also plan to do a blend of like male-female, so having like your mother and your father, so that you could create your history, or your lineage, your parents. Also, hair is quite weak. There's a new hair shader coming in 3.6, which includes new sets of hair, and they will keep adding more styles. Plus, they're also looking into facial hair as well. Next question is to do with ArcCorp. There's lots of buildings dotted around with landing pads on the top. What are they for? Now, these are early settings for additional content around ArcCorp. Think like the outposts we have on other areas. Missions could require you to go to that building and take out, say, a crime boss, for example, by landing on the landing pad and then taking some stairs into the building. Also, longer term plans is for players to have persistent apartments and using these landing pads on the top to get in and get out and take off. But from there, they need to work on how players will get to the main hubs. Do they take a sky taxi or a bus service? Lots of things to work out there, but it's exciting to hear. Even places like Hurston and Lawville can have sections for players to buy and rent with different grades of homes, like you could have a penthouse if you want, plus hangars, so they have a massive amount of real estate with these planets. They do want to have some hubs with windows. Someone asked if we could be looking out over the planet. They do want to have windows in some of them, but not all of them. It's just a case of figuring that out. So next question is about Area 18. Is this the only landing location? And no, it's not. They want to flesh out the whole Stanton system first, so that all the planets will have a single main landing zone at least. As they then build out the other systems, they will continue to add more content and locations to the Stanton planets. More areas will open up over time, but priority is obviously getting the hero landing zones done first. We will also see more coming to the current landing zones. Also, some of the stuff in Lawville is pretty low poly now, and what they've learned from ArcCorp will transition over and continue to improve all the areas as they build them out. But, there will be other landing locations, there'll be caves, there'll be all sorts of stuff. Someone asked in relation to the no-fly zone, what's going on here? Is this covering the whole planet? Now, they say they want you to fly between buildings, but there is going to be a hard deck in which the no-fly zone takes over. They're still having a few issues with this at the moment, but they are being fixed. They don't want players to just land in the central plaza for obvious reasons, but they don't want to just blow you up if you try. If you persist in trying to land in places you're not supposed to, they will then likely have you fade to black and awake in a jail cell, and then you'll need to pay a fine to reclaim your ship as well. They don't want to do too much of this augmented reality stuff because they don't want to take away from the sort of how the city looks. So it will be a work in progress and continued until they get it accurate. So the next question is quite a good one about the HUD and it being sort of very cluttered, especially the visor. Chris says that the current player vehicle UI is absolutely nowhere near where they want it to be. It's become messier over the years as well. They are planning a full reconcept of how everything should look and feel, especially with different manufacturers having different UI and being more contextual. An example he said is, instead of having ship MFDs and visors HUDs displaying the same info, you can choose to not have your display on your visor, or you could pick one of the MFD HUDs and then hit a button and that will cast that onto your visor, so you could have that on your visor rather than on an MFD. It is kind of up to you. They are also working on tech to make it easier to implement UI. This started about a year ago, creating the UI building block set, making it much easier and quicker to implement. The UI teams are pretty much swamped, as this affects every area of the game, so it should really help speed things up. They've also been looking into how to make the HUD text easier to read with different lighting. This will come with a new system, as they don't want to waste time changing the old system. It could be a dynamic adjustment as it detects the background colour and brightness, but they're not too sure yet. Now on to the really techie stuff. So the FPS around ArcCorp isn't great, and they asked Chris why. The client object container streaming made a big difference, but the server object container streaming is not complete yet, and as they add more and more content to the game, the server then bottlenecks. Server-side OCS will fix this, and it will also be the first stage to the server meshing, which basically means servers will handle specific areas like ArcCorp, Hurston, the space outside Hurston, and players will just move between them, being handed off from one server to the other seamlessly. All servers will eventually be fluid and just spin up and turn off as and when they are needed. They have got their top men working on this right now, and it's all happening right now as well. But they're also working on the physics system, which will be a phased batch model. Lots of this is done, plus they want to move to Vulkan because DX11 is too restrictive. Combining the physics, the server meshing, and Vulkan, this will get the game working as intended. Someone did ask a question again, which I'm really glad they did, about the pillars to completion. This was during CitizenCon, and also persistence. Can we have an update on all this? So Chris says there is a low level of persistence right now. Your ship state should persist, but they're also refactoring the whole database and item cache, which is happening alongside the server meshing and object container streaming. This will allow you to drop anything anywhere and then come back at a later date to find it. There will be little limitations to this, like there's a limit to how many objects can just be left, and they'll probably have to clean it up some way if there's too many. But he also spoke about wiping the data between patches. This will stop more frequently once the item persistent cache is in. Obviously, he knows it's a pain having to start again every time they bring out a new patch, but CIG will reserve the right to wipe if there was an exploit. For example, taking the money back that you made from that exploit. Item insurance will come for guns and equipment too with this new persistent cache as well. And then finally, for the sort of techie stuff, someone asked about what's the order of the backend stuff. What are we getting first and how is it flowing out? Now, the server-side object container streaming and persistent tech is being worked on now. All of the server stuff and persistence is planning to come this year, but obviously Chris Roberts doesn't really want to commit to an actual date. They could quite easily do more than 50 players per server now thanks to the performance updates, but he does say that they would rather have it as a game mode in Arena Commander where 100 players can go in and play because they don't have to generate the whole universe. In the PU, once the backend server stuff is done, they can then up the player count there. They're not planning to do a Battle Royale mode, but they are looking into making Star Marine and Arena Commander relevant again, so being able to practice dogfighting and FPS without the big PU punishments. But they also want to get stuff like what Rexzilla does on his streams where loads of players are fighting it out. All that information is excellent news, and I'm glad that he's addressed it. They took it off the roadmap, I think, because they can't commit to the dates and they don't want to overpromise and then underdeliver. Hopefully a lot of this tech like server-side OCS persistence, we know that's coming with the player inventories, and the starting part of the server meshing is coming this year. That is going to be fantastic. The next question is to do with VR. What's going on and when can we expect it? Now, they have to get Vulkan in first. They've started doing the early Vulkan setup now, but this will help with performance because they need to render the double views. Both eyes need to be rendered, and also to help against motion sickness. So once Vulkan is in, then VR may come along shortly afterwards. Someone asked about the mission givers. They all seem pretty shady. Will we get legitimate mission givers soon? And they say yes, they have shot and got some in the works, but Constantine Hurston is actually legitimate, as well as Rekko. Isn't she a legitimate mission giver? They have got a Blackjack security mission giver coming for ArcCorp soon, but they're working on tools to help speed up the mission giver pipeline, the AI logic and implementation. In the future, we will get missions from people like the advocacy, the UEE military. CIG will bring in mission givers on both sides of the law eventually. The current PU is obviously the first stages of the mission givers, so there's a lot more to come. So someone also asked about ground traffic and roads around landing locations. Now, they do plan to get some in. They did create a road tool about 2 years ago and never used it. We got to see this a long while ago. There's a backlog of Planetary features they want in, like roads, rivers, and caves, which we've seen recently, plus lots and lots more. Every release they get a little closer, so we'll start seeing them coming later down the line, I expect. Someone asked if Chris is happy with the issue council and its process, and he says yes, it's super useful. Every release, they analyze all the information and the issues and pass on the bugs to the relevant developers to fix. They have a huge group of QA testers with us, the community, which gives a fresh look at the game and finding bugs. Many of them don't see these bugs internally because they're constantly looking at it, so Chris Roberts is very happy with it. When will we get some more multi-crew gameplay? Now again, there's a big backlog of multi-crew functionality that they want to implement this year. They want captains assigning roles and controls to people, like this guy can be the comms officer or he can be the weapons officer, and granting access to parts of the ship specific to them. Also things like This will sort of bring things like entering a code to get access to the ship or an area of the ship that is handed out to the people who need that access. We should likely see some of this on the roadmap when it's scheduled. Chris did say maybe Q1 2020, so keep an eye on that next Friday. Next question is to do with ArcCorp's visuals from 2017. CitizenCon had the orbital view. It changed. It now looks less like the original concept. Now, he says the current view is actually the real view. The sitcom demo from 2017 was just a texture for effect. They didn't say much more, but it sounds like it won't look like the original concept with the rings anymore. But it will obviously get a lot more work on it as time goes on, so I expect the visuals to change from all distances, but I'm not expecting to see those rings again. Anyway, final question is to do with the orgs. What's happening with organizations? Now, this is high on their priority list, along with multi-crew gameplay and VoIPs features. They've not got all the full functionality yet. They do want you to be able to walk into a bar talking on comms to someone way off in somewhere else in the verse, but the people around you in the bar being able to hear you as well, thanks to the proximity chat. There's still lots of back-end stuff needed. For the org side of stuff, it will bring permissions as a group and access to certain areas like places an org has purchased, like an outpost, for example. They want it in-game as soon as possible, but they also need Spectrum integration. Again, the backlog is huge. They need more staff by the sounds of things, and they seem to keep hiring as many people as possible. Anyway, that was a long reverse the verse, but a really great one. Chris Roberts answered a lot of questions there, especially about that back-end tech, and didn't shy away from anything, which is good. I will probably take a closer look at some of the stuff Chris spoke about in separate, more focused videos throughout next week, and we'll also discuss this a lot on my Twitch streams, so make sure you're following me over there. With that said, let's move on. So also this week there was part 3 to the Brothers in Arms lore post. Jump Point is now available for all subscribers, and a post highlighting all the new features and ships coming in Alpha 3.5 was released too. Finally, they mentioned with the release of 3.5, the roadmap won't be updated last Friday. We'll have to wait till Friday the 5th of April. This will also include the Q1 2020 patch, plus likely a little shift around of the content coming in 2019. Obviously on Friday I will bring a roadmap update video so you can keep up to date with what's going on there. So that brings us to the end of the show. Thank you so much for watching. Be sure to hit that subscribe button so you don't miss a video. Hit that thumbs up if you enjoyed it, and share the video with all your friends. If you like what I do and want to help me make it better, follow the link below to my Patreon page to learn more.